Hello there. Is the turning point in the Ukraine war now coming? Well, while the debate in Germany about supplying Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine is gaining momentum, the British government is apparently considering supplying 10 Challenger 2 main battle tanks. This was reported by the Sky News TV station last week, and according to this, the possible delivery of tanks by the British should be used to ward off Russian attacks in the Ukraine war. But to what extent can the Challenger 2 tank from Great Britain influence the course of the war? Well, it can influence politics, first of all. The government of Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is also increasing the pressure on Berlin with the possible delivery of main battle tanks to Ukraine. Unlike Germany, or our traffic light government, London now seems to be taking their foot off the brakes and wanting to significantly strengthen Ukraine's defense. As the German magazine Spiegel reports, Britain has non-bindingly announced the Challenger 2 tanks. It would therefore take at least a few more weeks before the main battle tanks could be used. As it is also said, the decision should probably only be made official at the upcoming meeting of the Rammstein Group on January 20th in Rhineland-Palatinate here in Germany. Britain this week confirmed its intention to supply Ukraine with Challenger 2 main battle tanks, reinforcing its crucial role in NATO's war against Russia. So Britain will probably supply main battle tanks to Ukraine. And with that, the British are doing the job of the Germans as well. And that is absolutely embarrassing for the German federal government. It is a tragedy. The main battle tank debate has been dragging on in Germany since the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But for a long time, nothing happened. The federal government stood on the brakes, although the tanks were and are ready. Russian President Vladimir Putin has managed to unsettle the West so much that it is slow and cautious in delivering much-needed weapon systems to Ukraine. But where are Germany's red lines, and why did Social Democratic Chancellor Olaf Scholz draw them? Did Putin threaten us? No Western head of state or government answers these questions. Nobody knows why Scholz is still so reserved. Numerous theories are floating around in political Berlin. They range from a chancellor who is careful to avoid an escalation of the war to Leopard 2 tanks are technically not ready for use. But no matter what is true, this communication is fatal, and it also harms Germany internationally, especially now when the British go forward, because the Federal Republic is actually doing a lot in the Ukraine crisis, but it's only perceived as a tank break. That is also the fault of Scholz, who explains himself far too little. And now Germany is supplying infantry fighting vehicles, but excluding the Leopard 2 main battle tank, as if that would make a difference for Russia. So Putin can just laugh at us for this discussion. Ukraine also needs Western-style main battle tanks to survive a long war of attrition against the Russian army. Many Western experts and politicians have known this for months, and I said this for many months, if you remember. After all, the Ukrainian army had already lost more than half of its own tanks by the summer of 22, and the existing Soviet-made tanks in the West were also limited. The ring exchange initiated by Germany was ultimately just a game of time and was poorly organized and orchestrated by the Ministry of Defense, and we are getting rid of this minister now, as I heard today. As a result, the political gossip and the long debates on the tank issue have wasted important time for Ukraine. Unnecessarily. All the same, a rethink is gradually taking place in the USA, in France, and also in Germany. France supplies a reconnaissance tank. The USA and Germany give the Bradley and Marder infantry fighting vehicles to the Ukraine. Those are important steps, but they come much too late. We must not forget that wasted time in this war always costs lives, because if Ukraine had had more and better tanks in the fall, it would probably have been possible to conquer more areas. It would have been more difficult for the Russian army to set up new defense lines in the northeast. More Ukrainians would have been freed and would now escape torture and displacement. It just didn't happen. Great Britain is now even considering to deliver the Challenger 2 main battle tank, as I said, and this would remove the last tank hurdle because the West has not yet given any Western-style main battle tanks to Ukraine. Then this long tank debate in Germany would be over, finally. It's likely that the British main battle tank advance was coordinated with Western allies, including Germany. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock has just been to London. She's a Green, by the way, and she presumably also spoke to her British counterpart James Cleverly about the tank issue. Nevertheless, the delivery of battle tanks by Great Britain would be one thing above all: incredibly embarrassing for Germany. The Challenger 2 is militarily not the right tank for Ukraine. The British would like to give up a dozen at most. People are talking about 10. And in principle, it's not really worth training the Ukrainians on it. Spare parts for the Challenger 2 can only come from Great Britain or Oman because more countries do not use the main battle tank. The only purpose of thinking aloud about the delivery of British battle tanks to Ukraine is to tear down a political barrier. If a NATO member supplies battle tanks, others will follow suit if necessary. And with that, all eyes are now on Germany again. Logistically, only the delivery of the Leopard 2 really makes sense. The main battle tank was exported to 18 countries. Ukrainian needs for ammunition and spare parts could be shouldered collectively in Europe. Strategically, this is the right step. That's why Spain and Scandinavian countries asked the federal government if they could export their Leopard tanks, and Germany refused. But why is Scholz still hesitating? Putin is unlikely to start a nuclear war because he sees Leopard tanks instead of Marder tanks on the battlefield in Ukraine. Also, NATO will not be dragged into the war by the Leopard 2. After all, Moscow already sees the West as a war party and diligently spreads this in his propaganda. Perhaps Scholz and the other Western heads of state and government have important reasons for their hesitant support and for their intransigence on the tank issue, but they haven't named them yet. Instead, the Chancellor often acts in this crisis like his predecessor Angela Merkel. He only acts on the tank issue when the pressure is so great that it can no longer be avoided. Anyone ordering guidance from Germany has to wait until another country provides guidance or until a signal comes from the USA. Scholz does not lead, he's rather pushed. The Federal Republic must now also be courageous in this crisis and must not always hide behind other partners, or they must finally say what's so important and why these reasons speak against it. But it's really embarrassing like hell from our government made up of Social Democrats, Greens and the Liberals that they have to be pushed by other countries, and that a government I'm criticizing all the time, the British Tory government, has to be a role model for my own government in this point. I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.